Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Progress With Us podcast, where today we have a podcast and a guest that we've been waiting to get on for over a year now. So, Mr. Callum Carver, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Great to have you on today.
It's my pleasure.
I've kind of gone from following you to working alongside you to doing bits for you. So it's been a hell of a year.
It's cool. It's very, very cool. To like speak to you a little while ago and then see you in the flesh is
Yeah,
really
it's cool. It's cool. Well, thank you for coming up, and I want to get into it because I actually had a question that I was thinking about for the past year, which is what actually got you into the online business, self-development space? Because usually with people, they'll see someone and they'll follow their content and then they'll buy their course, and that's kind of their gateway in. But I'm not sure if that was the situation for you.
Yeah, I mean, mine was quite, I would say quite particular. I mean, it was typical. Like, it was like, I want to make money online. Actually, I didn't even know if I wanted to make money online, but you're always hungry when you're young. And I saw a TikTok video and someone was talking about like affiliate marketing, and they were like, you can promote someone else's product, you take a commission when you get a sale. And I was like, this sounds insane, because the whole like selling point was you don't have to have your own thing, you're selling someone else's. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I just like, there was no real switch, and I get what you mean. Someone either like gets inspiration from someone. There wasn't for me. I just started doing, and I just didn't stop. And it's like literally from that point of when I don't know, posted my first video, built my first funnel, I haven't stopped like 4 years later. So there was never like a massive turning point, like, oh my God, that guy is driving around the Lamborghini in Dubai, I want to be like him. It was literally just a case of, if I could make 20 quid a day online, I wouldn't have to get a job, kind of thing. And it just started scaling and progressing from there. So there was no like motivation. I think Stephen Bartlett says this, like, right, you're either running away from something or running towards something. I don't exactly know what mine was. There wasn't a lifestyle I was trying to live, but I wasn't like running away from any kind of like trauma or anything like that. So I was like,
what year were you in when that happened? Like I put things in chronological order.
Yeah.
So were you in like college at this point?
I was in college. I was in sixth form. So I was 17, probably soon. I think I was 17 December time. So I was 18 in June. So yeah, about 17 and a half.
So like year 13.
Yes. Yeah. Last year of college.
I think it's quite refreshing coming from that kind of point of view, rather than the people that are just like, I just want to stand in front of a Lamborghini and this and that. And rather than chasing the lifestyle straight away, you've gone from a point of just kind of see where it goes and follow the process.
Exactly. I feel like there's a stigma that's quite common where someone has to go from like rags to riches. They have to go from, Luke Belmar has it, like all these people have it, where it's like I was I was an immigrant and I had to come across the country and do all this kind of stuff. I was just slap bang average. Like there was nothing special, nothing like different. I was just like normal family, average upbringing. Of course I had my troubles and stuff like that, but it wasn't anything major. It was like I got to run away from something or achieve something. Slap bang average. I like had a goal in mind, and I just literally just didn't stop. That's literally it. That's like the source. If like people want it, you don't have to have this like crazy like from rags to riches, like bottom to the top kind of thing. Because people kind of use that as an excuse not to push themselves, because they're like, oh, I didn't have all this kind of trauma and stuff like that. But yeah, I think you can be slap bang average and still make it, I guess.
When I first saw your stuff, that was like I think the first video I ever saw of yours was you like running on a beach saying like, I come from a normal family, like I just want to make money this way, I just don't really want to go to university. And I saw it and I was like, bang, like that's the kind of refreshing message that I felt that I was missing. Because when you first get into the whole online business stuff, let's say you buy a course, most people have a section of like finding your why. And I was the same as you. I was like, I don't really know why I'm doing this. I'm just kind of, it seems appealing. I like the idea of being able to work from anywhere and not have to like go in somewhere and work. And I remember seeing your thing, and that was why I started following you, because I was like, this is quite refreshing. I feel like this kind of hit the situation that I was in at the time. Nice. And I feel like the audience that you attract with the Kaizen and Kaizen Connected is kind of that group of people.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's like it's just a matter of like, I think just be like showing the actual truth of it, as per, because people make themselves seem worse than they are to relate to people. But I just sort of thought, if you are completely transparent and honest and you just tell your current story, that's what helps you build a following and stuff like that. And even in business, like B2B world, no social media, that helps you progress because you are yourself. Like there's no kind of like you're not putting wool over anyone's eyes or anything like that. I think it's quite important.
Was it kind of from the start then? Was it just the thing of you seeing the videos, this and that, or was there a person there, kind of like a mentor from the start, or how did it kind of escalate in terms of finding your thing?
There wasn't, you know. I mean, mentor-wise, my dad's a fantastic mentor to me. Like, he owns his own business, nothing to do with online space or anything modern. It's like a cleaning company, right? But it's like that idea of like someone's always there for you, which is fantastic. But there was never like a mentor I necessarily looked up to. I think I looked up to different attributes of different people. Like, oh, this guy's, you know, extremely ambitious, or this guy's so logical and so smart, or this guy has like an insane business. And you kind of like piece it together. Like, I want to be like a mixture of these amazing people, which I think is a good kind of like, you know, it's a healthy thing to have, because you're not trying to be someone, you're not like trying to escape yourself and be someone else, but you're saying like, it's almost like superpowers. These like 5 people that have these cool superpowers, I want to be like the ultimate person, you know, in between. So that was the kind of idea. But no, never like a mentor or anything that like guided me. It was all like, the majority of it was self kind of driven.
I think that's really good as well though, because I think that's something that a lot of people are lacking nowadays. Obviously there's been a lot of controversial type figures and people, role models for people in the past few months and few years. And I think a lot of maybe young lads in particular kind of want to be exactly like a single person. Say, I want the lifestyle, I want the personality traits, blah, blah, blah. But what you said in terms of taking the attributes from person to person, I think is a much better way of kind of looking at it, rather than I just want to be a clone of this dude.
Yeah, because I think if you literally see someone and you're like, right, I want to replicate them, sure, it gives you a drive, 100%, but you are quite literally trying to escape who you are and not be yourself to be someone else. And I think that maybe it's good in the short term because you're going to do the things that they do and live the way that they live, but once you get to that point where you've hit some kind of success, you're like, who the fuck am I? Like, you literally don't know who you are because you've been trying to escape yourself the whole time. So I think that's why it's important to like take inspiration, take like kind of like, oh, I like that attribute. That guy's not, like even Andrew Tate, right? Controversial figure. Lots of people don't like him. I think his kind of like tenacity and his like his mission is like pretty incredible, and I would take that from him, and I was like, cool, I want to have that aspect of him, but I don't want his other opinions, and I don't have to. Like, I think in one video I was like, I was talking about Project Kaizen, right, and I was like, this project is going to help you become like these people, and I mentioned Andrew Tate, and the comments were like, why would you want to become like him? And I was like, I don't have to be him, but I can take attributes from him that are inspirational, and they're like, you know, they help you become successful and that kind of thing. I think that's something important to understand. You don't have to clone someone, but you can, you know, take inspiration and kind of like take different bits and bobs of them.
I remember when I was in my like consumption phase of just like watching all the YouTube videos and everything, and you'd watch someone and they'd say like, right, you need to do X, Y, and Z, you need to live like this, and then you'd go and watch someone else who you agree with some of their stuff, and they would say, and they would conflict it, and I remember I'd be like, well, what the fuck am I meant to do? Like, this person, like, Iman's telling you to run an agency, someone else is telling you need to get good at sales, someone else is telling you need to get good at this, someone's telling you need to train martial arts, someone's telling you need to go to the gym, and like, you agree with bits of everything that they say, but I was in the kind of mind of like, right, I need to agree with everything that they say. But take the meat and leave the bones 100%. From everyone.
Yeah, that's a trap where you just don't do anything. If you're trying to be 15 different people and start an agency, but also start Amazon FBA, but also get into property, you don't make any progress. Like, if there's so many different directions to take that are pulling you in different directions, you stay where you are. So I think, like, I feel like people have just lost the balls to actually be and have their own opinion and like take different bits and put it into their own point of view. And I think the people that do are the people that really kind of like make a name for themselves, because it's like, right, they're different. If you clone somebody else, there's nothing special about you. You are like a replica of them. Sure, you may make a lot of money and live a nice life, but like, then you can look at like, what's your, you know, what do you want? Do you want legacy? Do you want to be different? Do you want to stand out? But yeah, I think that's a trap that a lot of people fall into. There's so many people saying so many different things, so you end up doing nothing. That's more comfortable than doing everything. Like, that's literally it. I mean, I tried to like go into the property world. You know, Samuel Leeds. I bought his course. I was in his masterminds. I was gonna like, I wanted to go into property. I remember I was trying to convince my dad. I did his he did like an 8-hour seminar, right? Cost £1 to get into. I did it. I filled up a notepad, like all these like different bits of information. And at the end of it, I went to my dad and I was like, right, his program's £3,000. I know that's a lot of money. And my dad was like, listen, it's not for you now. And I think that's important as well, because property may be a good choice for me, but with where I was at in my life, it wasn't the highest leverage opportunity. I had no advantage in the space, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I wanted to do property, and like, I explored it, I exhausted it, it didn't work. So, not to say that I didn't try different things, but I tried it at different times, you know, and I think that's all right, as per trying to do everything and doing nothing.
Did you actually go to the live event? Because I've heard someone say that he's like the best salesman ever. He said he went to one of the events and he said like, right, if this is something that you want, run to the back of the room. And he said like everyone in the room, bar like 2 people, like literally sprinted to the back of the room.
Yeah, because I mean, that stuff is just making you feel like it's conforming, right? If you don't do that, you're the weird one, you're the odd one out. But I didn't go to a live event. I signed up to like webinar kind of thing. So it was like £1. and you get access to a webinar. He teaches you like loads of different things, and at the end he's like, right, so where do you go from here? Here's like 5 different programs, blah blah blah, and like the best, or maybe it was the cheapest one, was like $3,000, up to like 50 grand, right? And I was like, okay, cool, this could be the right thing for me, because I was watching every single one of his YouTube videos. I was trying to learn how to do rent to rent, HMOs, buy and flip and do up and that kind of thing, because there's another guy called Jack something, I don't know his second name, he's just a bit older than us and he's doing it, and I was like, he's doing it, I can do it. But it wasn't the right time for me in my life, just because I already had like a very small social media presence, and I was like, I need to use that and get to the next level, and so I did. But yeah,
something I want to kind of touch on of what you've just said is the fact that it wasn't right for you, but it might be at some point in kind of time. And for anybody else who's kind of in that same position where they might find something, but it might not be the right time, how would they kind of discern what is and what isn't?
Yeah, no, very good question. I think part of it is looking at like, I always gone about this, but it's like the unfair advantage that you have, right? Property, I had no advantage in it. In fact, I had all the disadvantages. I was too young, I had no experience, I had no capital. All the things were against me, so there was no point in going into it. When you're looking at like all these different opportunities, you have to like weigh out the leverage you have in the space. Do you actually have an advantage over other people? Because if you don't, you're playing at the same like playing field as everybody else. You're on the same level, and then you're just basically in like a different kind of rat race where you're trying to start a business, but you're in the same, like you're doing the same thing as everybody else, blah blah blah. So I think that, you know, when you're trying to like decide what you want to do, it's looking at, cool, what do I have an advantage in, what am I passionate about as well, because passion can take you miles. If you have a passion in something, you will learn everything you need to learn. You will fail as many times as you need to fail before you succeed. So yeah, I would say passion, leverage is very important. Like, do you actually have a point where you can do a lot with a little amount of time, or you know, you can utilize, like for me, I pursued social media because I was young enough, I understood social media, I started at a reasonable early age. And then your unfair advantages, like, do you have like a nick that other people don't have in that industry that you can use and kind of like scale up and onwards? Otherwise, yeah, you're doing the same thing as everybody else. It's like starting a business that you have no experience in. Sure, it's absolutely fine, but why would you do that when you can do something that you have an advantage in, which goes into like choosing your skills and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I would say if they were like, oh, I want to do everything all at once, you know.
Yeah, just kind of trying to niche down as well. I think that's the thing that a lot of people struggle with nowadays, especially with, you know, your TikTok and your Insta and that, and all the thousands of gurus out there. Finding a thing for you seems to be the hardest part, I think.
100%.
Especially for a lot of young lads that are just kind of dabbling in it at the moment, and they just don't know where to follow and where to go with it.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, the penny dropped for us. Like, this time last year, we were doing YouTube automation. And we chose it because of the lifestyle marketing of the person who sold it to us. And we got in there and very quickly realized, like, right, you now need to learn how to edit videos. I mean, you can edit videos well, but to keep someone engaged for 10 minutes, it's the script, it's the videos, it's the channel, it's the CTR and everything. And we were kind of there thinking, this isn't really working, and we just didn't have any skills in that area. But the penny dropped for me when I started working with you, and you were like, right, you actually need to build a skill in something. Like, you alongside watching Hormozy's stuff, and he's like, when you first start, you're not going to be good at something, and that's fine, but you can practice using a skill, and like now that skill is the foundation of everything that I do. Like, if I didn't have that skill, everything in the tower would all fall down without that.
Yeah, no, it's so important. I think that when you're going to some kind of business model, if you're not developing like a foundational skill that you can build on top of, you're like kind of waiting for your castle to crumble. YouTube automation, fantastic, sure, can make you a lot of money, but when it comes to the point where they change their RPM and things change and it's not as good as it was, what do you have? The skill of editing, fantastic, but how many like in areas can you use that in? That's why developing like a foundational skill, something that you can use in any industry, apply it to any market depending on what you're interested in, is the best bet. Because like you said, when you build on top of that, everything falls on this very strong foundational skill. And obviously spending your time like learning it, and like the amount of people where I'm like, cool, learn a skill, and they spend a week doing it and it's like, oh, I can't do it properly. If you actually put in like weeks and weeks and months into a skill, you can get incredible very, very quickly. And you can get far ahead of anyone else. And the reason for that is because no one else will do that. No one else will spend a month. If I said to you, take copywriting courses and YouTube videos and do everything you possibly can every single day, a few hours a day for a month straight, 4% of people are doing it. And because of that, you can get ahead of 96% of people just simply by doing it. And I think that goes with any skill that you kind of want to choose.
Yeah, you've got to have the intention behind it.
Oh, yeah,
like
100%.
It's not just, I remember, again, this was something that Tate talks about, and he said, well, everyone asks me how I speak so well. It's like, some of you asking me have been alive longer than me, so it's not time. It's the fact that I'm intentional in what I say, and I watch back everything. Like if you're writing copy, I write every day with intention to make it good and go back and review it. And that's how you get good, and having the intention behind it. Like by the time I've been working with you, I think I'd watched 16 hours worth of copywriting courses and still couldn't write copy until you made me write a single piece of copy every single day. And it was like, right, now I get it. Yeah. Now I'm actually getting good at it.
100%.
So you need to put the time and the intention behind it as well.
Yeah, 1000%. It's like, I could tell you to learn a skill, but you're just going to watch a video like mindlessly. And it's like, cool, I've ticked off that video. I'm going to go on to the next, tick it off. It's like taking action and repetition and planning. But it goes with absolutely anything. Like take speaking, copywriting. It can be with like any skill that you want to go ahead with. You have to actually take like action with the intent to actually improve as per just doing it because mentor said watch a video on this and you've ticked it off. You know, it's people do that because that's like cool, that's the easiest thing to do, tick it off. But when you actually go out of your way because you want to learn and improve, you scale like ridiculously quick because no one else will do it. Scaling isn't, you don't have to be top 0.0001% of the world. It's like top 5%, and you can do that by spending a month learning something because no one else would do it. Like Hormozy says, right? It's like stupidly easy to win because no one else is trying to win. So it's like it's almost like, you know, you become passionate about it because of how simple it is. And like the person behind this camera who doesn't think that they can get good at something or make money won't do it because they won't put loads of effort and work into it, you know, because it's like, I don't know, maybe it's because they, you know, they have their own limited beliefs, but it's you're always going to play that game.
I want to run it back kind of like this time last year, maybe a bit further. But how was where did you actually get the idea of the Kaizen from? Was it a lying in bed at 3 a.m. moment and you thought this doesn't exist, or was it kind of like a gradual, you've been posting content and seeing that these were the things that people were kind of looking for?
Yeah, I think it was a collection of kind of everything I'd done in the past, but a big part of it, especially when it comes into like skill to profit and stuff like that, is that this is what people need. Like people think that I need to start a business, I need to do this. No, you need to learn the very basics, the foundationals. You need to learn how to have an extremely strong mindset. You need to learn how to have a good physical body, and you need to learn how to know how to make money. Once you do that, then you can start building on top of. People want to jump into business models and do crazy things and they fail because they don't set the foundations. And the Kaizen was kind of like the idea of a place. I mean, part of like the newsletter and stuff, which is where it started, was the idea of like I wanted to create a vehicle where someone could like spend 2 minutes a day learning something to improve their mind, body, or make money, and then do the same the next day, and the same the next day, and the same the next day. And that's where like the newsletter started from. And yeah, that was the topic, because I was like, those are like they're the 3 pillars of life, you know, wealth, health, mindset kind of thing, or happiness, whatever it is. Those are like the 3 pillars. Everything else is built on top of that. So I wanted to make like a place where you could learn those 3 foundations and get extremely good at them, extremely kind of well versed, and then you can start to build on top of, because then you can really dive into fitness, you can really dive into the making money, you can really dive into mindset. But without at least a basic understanding of all 3 of them, I think you're slowly you're fighting an uphill battle, because you don't have the right tools to kind of like build on top of.
And when you started the newsletter, did you always know that you wanted to do something like Kaizen Connected at the end of it, or did you kind of just think, right, the newsletter was the original idea and this is like, that was kind of doing the thing? That
was it. It was just a newsletter. I mean, part of it was I didn't want to try and monetize and think, how can I make money? Because I knew it would take my focus away from providing value. Yeah. If I'm just providing value with the intention to like monetize it in a few months' time, my value is skewed. It's not because I really want to help, it's because I'm like teeing them up, you know, I'm feeding them, getting them all fat and plump so that when I want to strike, it's perfect. That wasn't my intention. My intention was like, if I can post a newsletter every single day for a year straight without missing a day, and then identify their problems and what they actually want based on what I've kind of provided, then I can create an amazing product, an amazing solution to their problem. And that's why I didn't kind of go with the idea of monetizing. It's like social media, right? People start social media because they want to make money. The problem with that is that your core reason for making content isn't because you want to actually help people, provide value, or improve yourself. It's because you want money. And people can smell that out. I feel like people can sniff that out. So
especially with all the clip culture and stuff nowadays, I feel like it's such a massive thing, you know.
100%. Yeah, I didn't monetize the Kaizen for a year and like a month. No, and bear in mind, we had like very good stats. No ads, no sponsorships, no kind of like affiliates at all. We sold journals, which was again more just to provide value, but like on top of that, nothing for a year straight. And this is like, you know, we had like 50, 60,000 eyeballs a week on this thing. That people pay a lot of money for that. but we didn't because we were like, they just play the long game, keep providing value, identify what they want, and then provide a solution to that, as per to like, how can we make money off this as soon as possible? That was the kind of idea. So
did you count how many days you'd written an email for? Like, do you have a number? Like 300 and
it was over a year straight. So I think it was a year and a few months before I moved it to 3 times a week, because I had like revelations of like, am I doing the wrong thing here? But yeah, it was literally like, it says it on Beehive, it's like a ridiculous amount of weeks straight. I think like 76 weeks straight. And then however many days that is, I don't know. But
that is insane.
Yeah.
That is. I remember I would wake up every single morning and have that email in my inbox. How are you still writing them?
It was just me as well.
Yeah.
Like it was literally ideating, writing them, putting them out. And this got me really good at copy as well. And I feel like it got me better at speaking as well, because it's like you are essentially putting your thoughts, instead of projecting them through your mouth, you're projecting them through your fingers right onto like an email. So it was like, again, for me, I wanted to improve myself, and so I did it every single day, and that's why I was like to you want to get better at copy? Write me something every single day.
I think a newsletter is actually a really good way. I know in Project Kaizen, one of the pillars is producing something every day. And the newsletter that I write for Progressus was the first thing that we'd ever produced, like before we put out our podcast, before I put out any content. And it was literally, my mum was on it, my brother was on it, and my girlfriend was on it. But it just desensitized me to actually posting something. And that was kind of like in preparation for the podcast. Like I'd been writing for like 45 days before we even told anyone that we'd recorded the first episode. And I think that like a newsletter and actually writing down your thoughts and stuff is a really good barrier to entry with producing something. I don't know if you'd agree.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I think it's also just the idea that you don't have to write to get eyeballs or get views. It's like for your own well-being as well. You're writing to build up a portfolio of like what you actually want to produce, which I think it's important. It's like the kind of idea people want to get a result straight away for the work they put in. Just like if you want to start a business or a personal brand, whatever it is, start posting every single day, writing every single day, whatever it is, and like literally you can post it to an account and don't check anything, and then do the same thing the next day. Same thing with like a newsletter, because you're building up a portfolio of who you are as a person or your business, which I think is good. But 100% desensitize. It's like Twitter and stuff like that, right?
How much do you think delaying the gratification of the Kaizen and getting all that market research and actually finding out what people wanted paid off in the long term, as opposed to if you had if you had had the idea for Kaizen Connected and put a Jobby 1.0 version out like 6 months in, how much do you think delaying that gratification, as long as you did, paid off in the end in terms of the final product that you produced with Kaizen Connected?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely did. I kind of see this as like it's like a balloon, right? And the more you pump it up with value, the bigger it gets. And your kind of goal is to have the biggest explosion possible. So you pump it up with as much value as possible. When you do pop that balloon, it explodes and everything, good comes out of it, and it like creates a good result, makes you a lot of money. That was my kind of idea, to just like keep pushing it. And I didn't really have there was never like a thing in my head saying I'll do this for a year and then monetize. It was finding the right time to monetize, but the right time wasn't until a year later. I didn't identify like what the core problems people actually had were until about a year later. And I think it was just playing the patient game of like, I don't have an intention to monetize. I don't have an intention to like squeeze as much money out of it as possible. Partially because I was making money and other ways, but also because it was like, I want this to be a brand that I can sell in the future. You can't sell a company if you're monetizing it 3 weeks in because you're money hungry. You've got to be able to, or willing to play the long-term game when nothing comes out of it for a long period of time. And then when the right moment comes, you strike and you put everything into it.
So for people, I guess, wondering in terms of the right moment, something like you've just said, when do you think that is for? Like, when can you kind of decide, all right, now's my time to strike? I've been working on this brand for either 2 months or 10 years. Now I want to hit the gold mine.
Yeah, I think it's when a big thing for me was when people started asking. They started asking like a few weeks in, sure, but when it became very, very common where someone was like, have you got a Discord to join or something like that? That was when I knew like people want this. So then it was about like creating an amazing product and actually trying to build something that people could jump into. But yeah, I think it's just listening. Like a lot of the things that we did with the Kaizen was like getting feedback from people in the newsletter. So it was like, right at the bottom, like, did you like this issue? Or like we had an Ask the Kaizen part, or we sometimes sent out emails saying like, what's your feedback? Like, do you have anything? A big part of it was like, have you got a community? Like, where can I join, meet other like-minded people? When we realized that, it was like, okay, cool. Now it's becoming prime. It's becoming the right time to strike because there's demand. It's literally like demand and supply demand, right? When there's demand, then you supply. Until there was demand, there was no point because it would just be like, be a puff, nothing will come out of it. So it was listening for people to hear what they wanted. It's like growing a personal brand. Like, I would never say monetize your personal brand until you can clearly identify a problem that your audience has. Only then do you strike, because then it's perfect. You know what it is, you know what they want. Otherwise, if you just kind of like put a product out 2 weeks into creating your content, you don't know what people want. And I think it's like you're then playing an uphill battle, trying to figure it out and optimize the product on this kind of stuff.
I think a lot of people who are doing coaching, like I have some clients who, and I said this on the last podcast as well, who have come to me and they've said like, oh, I want to launch a course, I've got a skill in this area. And I've been working with them now for like 2 months, because I won't market anything until they've done like a cohort. So there's like a dude in the States who's just got like 20 people on. He's now got feedback from all of them, like how much would they pay for this, what needs to be added and whatever. And now we actually have something that is good enough to sell to at least some people and test that cohort even further. But I think a lot of people who, like, I've bought things where I've bought it and I found it incredibly underwhelming, but you can really tell the difference between people who've really put the thought and time behind what they're selling compared to the people who've just jobbied it and flung it out. They're marketers.
100%. Because I think it's like, it's almost like, let's say you buy a product, let's say someone joined Kaizen Connected. The way to make it very, very clear that this was thought out carefully before they actually joined in was when everything's seamless. Like, they join in and their first question that comes into their head is instantly answered because it's already there, it's already ready. Same with the second, third, fourth. Their first problem they come up with is answered, it's solved because it's been thought out and it's been kind of like gone through. That's like whenever you join a course, to understand if it's a really valuable course, like the first problem you encounter, see if there's already a solution to the problem. If there's not, they haven't thought it out, there hasn't been asked in the past, all this kind of stuff. But I completely agree. I think it's like, how seamless is the thing that you're kind of buying, and then you'll find out how kind of new it is.
And in this kind of like 2-year period while you've been building the Kaizen, you're still, you're only a year older than us. What, you're 21?
21, yeah.
21. Like, how's your kind of social life been in the past 2 years? With friends, even with your partner. Like, how do you find that balance between building a business so young that has such a wide impact as well? Because it's not just your business that you're building. Like, you have all these people who are now kind of relying on you to help you with their stuff as well. So like, how's that kind of impacted what your weeks look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, in terms of my weeks, I mean, it changes completely, right? Because it's like, you're in control of the things that go right, you're in control of the things that go wrong, which means that it's all on your shoulders. In terms of like social life and stuff like that, I mean, even when I started, I remember like, when I started making TikToks and stuff, I remember my, I've said this before, my first TikTok video getting chucked in the boys group chat. Like, you get rinsed for it. It's like, I'm TikTok boy now. I remember I was at work, I was like stacking shelves in the back, had my phone out, and I see like get tagged, and it's like my TikTok video, and I get that's absolutely fine. And then people start to trickle off who just like aren't with it, and that's absolutely fine. But then in the future, those people start to loop back around, and it's like, well, how did you do what you did, kind of thing. And it's like, everyone gets a full circle moment, where that people take the piss out of you for starting business or starting a podcast, and then they want to start their own a year later. Like, what's the software used? All that kind of stuff. So social life, I think it's just a case of the people who really believed in what I was doing and like, loved me as a person stayed around. And I that's, those are the kind of people I respect. And people that didn't, or they just kind of trickled out, or you don't stay in contact with, for a reason. Like, I'm not being funny, but people are either going to be kind of like an anchor to you or an accelerant. They make you enjoy what you do, or they kind of make you feel bad about it. So getting those people out of your life that make you feel bad, I think is like step one. Very, very important. Relationships and stuff like that, I mean, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, mostly it's just working more, right? I think, I mean, I have a great partner. She's over there. She'll hear this, but like mine's pretty incredible in the fact where she's like very understanding of everything, which is really good. I know that, I was with Flo just before I started all my stuff. So she kind of saw me transition from like a skater boy pretty much who had no idea what he was doing to like, okay, he's like jumping on calls now. He's making videos and stuff like that, which I think is the best transition to have. And I think finding someone that will just like kind of help you in your entire process is like insane. Like there's nothing quite like it, because it's either that or it's like, you're scared to work because your partner's going to say like, why are you working all the time and stuff like that. Having someone that understands it pushes you forward like 1,000 times, which is amazing. And when you find that person, it's kind of like, you really got to like hold on to them, because they will help you scale when you hit that 10K, that 20K, that 40K, that 50K. When you're doing, hundreds of thousands a month, they'll still be with you. It's just a different level, right? So, Yeah, I mean, my relationships have changed, not with family so much. That's always been quite good. I think they've just kind of understood it as well. I've always had a supportive family. In terms of friendships, though, I think it's natural, and I think it's like the best kind of natural as well.
I think there was I cut onto the relationship. I'm in a similar situation to you, where my girlfriend was with me when I was necking a litre of spice rum every Friday and going to town and whatever. And like, she gets it, like the hopping on calls thing, like, sorry, I'm going to meet you at 8 and not 7 because I've got a call, and she just gets it. And that is such a superpower.
100%.
Like, I don't envy you. Like, not,
I was just going to say, I wish I could say the same.
I don't envy you, because like some of the people I know now who are like 25, 26, who haven't had a partner, who are in the online space and now they're making good money, like it feels like some of their biggest issues is 100%. The fact that they just don't know, like, if the people that they're speaking to are genuine or not.
Yeah.
And like, that just seems like a terrible, it's not a great outcome.
100%.
And with the friendship thing as well, you know, I don't really feel like we never had anyone say anything to us when we started.
Not really, to be
because but the people who were talking about it would never talk about it to your face.
Yeah, that's it.
And like like you said, the people who do support you, they will support you throughout it.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. Yeah. And I think it naturally whittle out. And that's the best thing. The last thing that you want is when you kind of like, you know, have some kind of success and there's people around that you didn't really understand, like in terms of you don't understand their real intention or their real thoughts about it. And then you kind of find out the wrong things. You know, I think that identifying that as early on as possible is the best thing. And you realize very quickly that, hold up, these people aren't in my life anymore. Thank God.
Yeah.
You know, you realize that very, very quickly, because maybe it's the people that you know always used to egg you on to go out. It'd be like, come on. And when you say no, and then they like shut you off, thank God, because they would continue to egg me on to go out. And it's like, that's not the life you want to live. Then good for it, 100%.
I think it's that thing about friendships. I know we've spoken about it before on calls and stuff, but I think friendships is one of the biggest reasons that people don't go ahead and do something a bit more creative or don't start their own business. It's like, well, what are my friends going to think about it? Like, I actually believe that is probably top 3 reasons why people don't do something like this.
Yeah, it's quite sad, to be honest, because it's like, the thing I like to say is, are you living your life for that person? No. So why are you making decisions based on how they're going to think or feel? Oh, I don't know, just because I'm scared about what they're going to say. So are you going to limit your own potential because Bill is going to make fun of you? Like that, when you put it in that extent, it's like, it's ridiculous. Are you going to like not live the life you want to live because someone who you happen to sit next to in English class, who's now your friend, is going to say something about it? If that's the case, then I'm not being funny, but good. Because it's like you won't be ready for the bigger challenges. If you're not able to overcome what your friend's going to say to you, then you're not going to be ready when you have to kind of like face more criticism. And
you get a million views and the comments are full of all sorts.
Crumble because of the fact that you can get over that tiny hurdle. I mean, it's not to say that people that do have that don't become an entrepreneur. Like, you can get over that. I think most people do. But if you're not willing to, or you won't, like, that is like, so many people say that, like, oh, what will my mate think? It's like, well, again, you have to make that decision on like who you value more, your own life or their opinion. I've had a 35-year-old say it, and it's like, if that means you've been living your life so far based on how other people think about it, and it's like, you know, it's just a bit sad because you won't do what you want to do based on what other people think.
I mean, parents as well. Like my parents took some convincing when I dropped out. Like, I don't know about you, but like,
mine did a bit.
They the original plan was, I said I was going to take a gap year, and I was like, right, just trust me, because I thought, like, right, if I've got a year, and it was like by the end of uni term as well, so it was like April until September, when like this time when I would have had to go back, and I was like, right, by the end of this, hopefully, I know that I will have had enough evidence and I will have built up enough to be able to warrant not going back. I feel like maybe having a strategy like that, because people's parents, like, depending on like the culture that you come from or whatever, not going to university or not following that traditional path is a big thing. Like, a lot of families don't, like, they really, it holds a lot of value.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't speak for other cultures here. I speak for more like, you know, the way that I dealt with it in my family. I think the big part of it is like having a clear plan, like you said, a clear strategy, because a lot of the time people just think you're winging it. Having like a backup as well, just not in the case that you want to do the backup, but more to kind of like give them that peace of mind. And also having like, you know, clear intention that you're actually passionate about it, I think. Like ticking those 3 boxes. And I think that, you know, depending on the parent, that's going to help them kind of understand it a bit more, where it's like, listen, I'm going to try this for 3 months. If it doesn't work, here's my backup. Here's what I'm projected to kind of do. Here's my plan. Here's what I've been doing in the past, kind of thing. And then, you know, if you outline that and make it very, very clear, I think it's quite hard for your parent to be like, no, you're not allowed to chase your dreams, you know? And then you kind of encounter different problems. But no, my parents were always really supportive, which I couldn't be more thankful for, because it just makes it a bit easier. It's just less of a burden, you know? It's not like, oh God, I've got to like impress them or do something for them. It's more just a case of, I'm doing this for myself, and I know that if all else fails, you know, I can move back in with them, and that's okay, you know, kind of thing, which is, you know, I'm very, very lucky for that.
Do you know something I wanted to circle back to actually is your kind of circle of people around you. I know a lot of like kind of people in the entrepreneurial space nowadays say, oh, everyone needs to be in the same kind of space. You need to be surrounded by entrepreneurs, this and that. But I know you said, are you kind of still friends with all the people you were beforehand? And what's your kind of like circle of people like around you? Is it a mixture of people in this and that, or how does that kind of go?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I would always say is that 100% you need to surround yourself with like-minded people and people who are going to push you forward. But I don't think it means that you have to eliminate your like current circle. I think it means you make a new one. You know, you can have different groups of friends and different groups of people around you. I think that people kind of say like your circle around you has to be like extremely ambitious and high achievers and stuff like that. And when you're starting out, that's impossible to do unless you can provide a ridiculous amount of value to these people. So having your circles of people, as long as they're not holding you down, and finding more, I think is the best bet. Like I have circles of entrepreneurs that are making stupid money, like ridiculous money, and they're very, very successful. And they're like either my age, sometimes younger, sometimes older, sold businesses and this kind of thing. And that's an amazing circle to have. But I also have my circle of friends that I've known since I was 5. You know, like a few of my best mates that I'll talk to every now and then, which is fantastic. When I go back to my kind of home city, I'll like meet up and play football with. And I think that's a good thing to have as well. Like, you know, I think if you are eliminating your core friends who do believe in you and do trust you, it's like the most kind of, you know, like arrogant thing that you can possibly do,
100%.
because you're basing this as well of someone else's opinion. You've seen the guy in Dubai driving around Lamborghini go, like, you shouldn't have any friends that aren't kind of like, you know, 10 times more successful than you. If that's the case, then you are, again, basing your decisions off someone else's opinion, which I don't think is a good thing to do. And I think it keeps you grounded as well. I love to go back to like where I'm from and like go meet my mates, whatever it is. I think it's like the most kind of like grounding thing as well. Just because it kind of like shows, like it puts everything into perspective as well, which is very, very cool. When you're moving very, very fast, everything becomes a new normal. You know, like you go on holiday or you do this thing or you meet these people. That's normal now. When you kind of go back to like see your friends and stuff like that, I think it's an insane feeling as well, because those are the people that love you for you and not for like, oh, he's an entrepreneur, I'm probably going to put him in my circle because he's making this amount of money. Yeah. You know, it's because they actually like you as a person.
Like Callum has a newsletter, I bet will be able to help me with mine.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like it does like, I think we're lucky that the network of people that we have, we've met them like quite at the start of their journey, and they've been really willing to help us. So the relationships aren't very transactional. But I can imagine that it, you know, the higher up you get, that people are a lot more aware about the fact that everyone's kind of providing value, and like, this guy's good at this, I'll put you in touch with him, and their relationship is probably quite contingent on the entrepreneurial value that they have as opposed to the people that they are.
I tell you,
I remember that Chris Williamson on Hormozy's second episode, when Hormozy's talking about the lonely chapter. And I remember seeing that and just being like, bingo, because it's where he's basically saying that, you know, you feel like you've outgrown your old friends and you've not got enough evidence and you're not far enough along to be able to speak to the people who you want to speak to. And I remember seeing it and relating to it, but I also think that, like what you were saying, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like you can have both. Like, and that's not just for friendships, but that's for loads of things in life. Obviously, you need to go through periods of unbalance with like work and stuff if you really want to see progress. But unbalance can be 80-20. Like, you know, you can still have that 20%. Like, while I was doing Skill to Profit and building my stuff, I went to Tenerife for 5 days and sent it. And like, and it didn't really affect anything. It's not something that I would do often, but you can do both. Like, you don't solely have to group yourself in with like, right, I'm the kind of person who doesn't go out, I'm the kind of person who doesn't drink, because I think it gets to a point where it's almost like a negative curve where like you get like 80, if you're balanced 80% of the time and you're working 80% of the time, you're all right, and that's like optimal level. But as soon as you start going to like 100% of the time, then it kind of starts to take a bit of a dip, because you might be burnt out and your mind might be on, you know, if it comes to Friday night, it's 10 o'clock and you're working and you think, do you know what, I just want to go and meet my mates for a Friday or something.
Sorry, go on. I was just saying, it's good to touch yourself as well, like really have different kind of sides of your life as well. Like, you know, when you're chilling with the missus or something, or like hanging with your mates, it's good to have that separation. You know, there's that kind of like workhorse, like all day, every single day. I mean, I put out a tweet about it where it's like, for the people that are working 14 to 16 hours a day, you just clearly have a lack of priorities and the inability to deep focus, because you don't need to do that. No one needs to work that long and that kind of like heavy, because you can't. I mean, it's like no one can work for 14 hours completely focused, no distractions, all this kind of stuff, unless you have like your priorities all over the place, which means you don't actually know what you're working on. Because if you're doing that and you're making the progress that you should, you don't have to work that amount. Like, let's say, for example, you're building a business, you should be working that amount at the start. As you start to scale, you should start be like outsourcing and stuff like that, and like delegating. If you're still working 14 hours a week when you're making 10 plus K a month, you are doing something wrong. It's not noble. It's not like, oh, I'm just a cool entrepreneur, you know, I'm like nonchalant and I just work all day. I don't think it is at all. I think it's just you're clearly unorganized. Otherwise, you would like make the smart decision to delegate where you can, make sure that your time is spent on the most optimized things and stuff like that. And that, again, comes back to balance, you know, that allows you to detach yourself and like focus on the things that you should.
Yeah, I think what I was going to say before is we spoke about it on a podcast with a bodybuilder that we had on, Josh Croggan, and he talked about being a 95% bodybuilder, which is obviously, I guess it's a little bit different in the world of bodybuilding, but very similar as well. And in the way that he put it is obviously 95% of the time he's locked in with his diet, his training, everything like that. But that 5% of the time where he might go and have food with his girlfriend, go for a pint with his mates, do whatever, he was saying how that 5% is actually what makes the whole 95% worth it as well. Because without that, he's just kind of, what's he all doing it for as well?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I think there's different stages that you have in your life. There's only like head down, working really hard to achieve something, to then detach yourself, or like, you know, be able to kind of like coast a bit more. But no, I completely agree. Like, you need the separation in what you're doing. You need to be able to kind of like, if you don't have a way to detach yourself from like the work and being an entrepreneur and stuff like that, I think that it becomes not negative at all, because sure, everyone loves to grind and stuff like that, but it becomes something that's not as enjoyable, because you're working so hard as an entrepreneur and building what you want to build so that you can live the life that you want to live. And I think that a lot of people don't allow themselves to do that part. They get so locked into the working part that they don't allow themselves to kind of like, you know, eat the fruits of their labor kind of thing, which is like, you know, the 5%. Yeah. It's like, cool, I put all my effort into this so I can relax and I can do this, which I think is important.
I think it gets even more difficult when you actually enjoy what you do. Like, I really enjoy working, and like, it sounds insane, but like, there are times when I'm like, you know, I really enjoy this. Like when I'm on calls with people, or, you know, when I'm doing work that I feel competent at, I enjoy that. And I feel like that's almost where my balance gets a bit skewed. It's like, I actually enjoy working, like, sometimes opposed to other things. But I guess it's just about finding that balance. I did want to ask you as well, how do you see yourself? Obviously, you've got quite a big following now, and you've got the Kaizen Connected, and that's, you know, you've built the ecosystem around it. But what kind of figure do you want to be in the space? Like, if you had to think about where you want to be in like a year's time or whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I do plan ahead. I 100% plan ahead, but I leave a lot of room for growth. I leave a lot of room for like adapting when necessary. Like, if there's something that's gonna come up in 6 months that's gonna be like a clear sign to pivot, I'm gonna take that pivot. Like, I want to. I mean, who would I look up to? I don't know. Luke Belmar's like Capital Club. I think that's huge. I think that's very, very good, because he just like has hundreds of different people, the best of the best, and basically puts all the information and education into one place, which I think is insane. But I don't really try and like say I want to be this person of this industry, because I feel like I don't allow myself to then adapt and like kind of say, okay, cool, this market may be better to get into, or this may be a better choice, and then move into it, because I'm so locked into this one vision. I mean, that's my kind of take anyway.
Because like, obviously you've got, when I think of like the big figures in the, I think about like Tate, Iman, Luke, and like, do you think you would ever want to get to that point? Like, would you aim for that, or would it just be a byproduct of the work that you're putting in and see what happens?
Yeah, that's a good question. Would I want to? I don't know. Like, it's, for me, as much as I can kind of like preach, you know, like don't make it all about the money and stuff like that. That's my metric of success at the moment. Like, the money that you make, it's like, cool, well, I'm going up. So I don't exactly know if I'd want to get to that point. I mean, do I want to become a billionaire? No way. It's not the life I want to live, because I know the responsibilities that come with that. Do I want to be like a, you know, 8-figure, like a business owner? 100%. Like, 1,000%, possibly 9 figures. That would be amazing. I mean, that's the goal. But I think there's a limit between kind of that point where you actually get like a negative return, because the money that you make is actually giving you so much responsibility on your shoulders that now the whole reason of why you started in the first place is not going to come into fruition, because you're not going to be able to live the life that you want to live, because now you've just given yourself a whole bunch of responsibility that if you kind of, sure, you can detach yourself from it, but it's all on your shoulders, you know. So I don't exactly know. I don't know. I just keep kind of like deciding based on like what happens. You know, I have goals and stuff, but we'll see.
Because obviously with your socials and stuff, you know, like you are constantly growing, and it doesn't really seem to be slowing down. And I was just wondering, like, at some point, if you were to get there, like, how is that something that you think you would want? And yeah, that's why I asked. But you know, you've coached now with SMIP, Skill to Profit, the cohorts, and Kaizen Connected, and Inner Circle, like what, upwards of 100, 200 people?
Yeah,
more. Yeah, more.
Yeah.
What are, you know, you speaking to these people, a lot of them are young, similar age to us, maybe a bit older. What are kind of the most common things that you see that hold people back, both mindset and business?
Yeah, good question. I think a big one is limiting beliefs in what's obtainable. Like a lot of the time when you're kind of like planning and stuff like that, like the start of your journey, and you're like, right, I want to do this, I want to make this amount of money, blah, blah, blah. People's goals are set so incredibly low because that's their standard. You know, if they're making, you know, I was talking to a guy a few weeks ago who he makes like 1K a month at his job, and his entire goal, that all he's focused on is to make 1K so he can quit his job. Don't get me wrong, that's amazing. But that means everything that you're going to be working on is like, it's formed in the way to make £1,000. It's not formed in the way to make 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. Everything is aiming to make £1,000, which means once you hit that point, you haven't built up the infrastructure or the kind of belief or the systems to actually get past that. I think that people are like, yeah, I want to make £2,000, £3,000 a month. And don't get me wrong, that's incredible. But if you're not setting your sights on 10, 20, or like much further, you will not kind of like start with the intention to make that amount of money, and you're gonna find a very quick glass ceiling above your head when you've made that amount of money, but you're like, well, I haven't actually built anything out to actually go past this, because this is all I thought there was. So I think a big part of it is like, and I get it, because it's hard to say I want to make 10,000 when you have no proof that you should be the person that makes 10,000, but it's that kind of delusion, you know, where you should have that delusion of like, I can do it and I will do it. And having that delusion allows you to set everything up with the goal to hit that. You know, if you started your business with the entire goal to make £1,000, you wouldn't be where you are, because of the fact that you would have built everything in mind with, I don't know, pricing a client at £500 so you can get 2 of them. It goes all the way backwards. Pricing clients, how much you work, how you build out a team and stuff like that. Like it kind of filters down backwards. So I think a big of it.
I have notes in my notebook in my bag from like a year ago where I would calculate how much I was earning from both of my part-time jobs put together and reverse engineer what I would have to do to just make that back. And I feel like that is almost like, I feel like that's probably a pretty common starting point. Like, oh, if I just made this much, then I wouldn't have to work my job anymore.
Yeah.
And even though that is a starting point, you know, when you are speaking to people who perhaps have that limiting belief, how would you, I know it's different for every individual, but how would you go about overcoming that limiting belief?
Yeah, I think the first thing is literally asking like, why? Like, why don't you think more? Because then it's like, oh, you know, they'll go into like the routes of like, oh, I haven't done it before, blah, blah, blah. And that's absolutely fine. But it's like, you've really got to ask them the question, what happens when you hit this amount? And they're like, yeah, okay, you know, we'll go to the next and stuff like that. Why don't you do that in the first place? Like, stop kind of like waiting to hit a point until you can, I don't know, like reevaluate where you're at, but just set the sights high. It's that kind of thing. Like Elon said it ages ago, you know, it's like, whatever you want to achieve in 6 months, try and achieve it in 3 months. You definitely won't hit it, but you'll be much further ahead than you would in 6 months. It's having that kind of like delusion. Like, you've got to kind of make someone like open up their mind to, this is entirely possible, because depending on what business you're running and what you're doing, it's like, that is a matter of 1 to 2 clients, and you can completely surpass that. And like, oh yeah, but I can't get that. But it's like, well, if you have the systems in place, you do the right amount of stuff to get 1 client, what's stopping you from rinsing and repeating that to get another and another and another and another, and then you build out the systems and the team and stuff like that. So I think a big part of it is kind of, like you said, it's all personal because they have their own reasons for it. You know, it could always go back to like, oh, I had financial troubles as a kid and stuff like that, so that's all I want to do, and that's absolutely fine. But you have to be willing to be a little bit delusional about what like is possible for you, because if you're not, you're going to set yourself a goal that's going to limit you. Your goal is kind of your limit. So yeah, I think it's just be delusional a little bit anyway. Don't be like ridiculous, but like a little bit kind of mental in the fact that I have no proof that I can do this. No one's told me that I can do this. I haven't done this before, but I reckon I could.
I think that kind of even goes back to us starting the podcast.
Yeah.
To be fair, neither of us, it was like the most random thing. We were just sat in the kitchen, decided to do it. We hadn't had a clue how we were going to start a podcast. And then, what was it, like 3 months later, something like that?
I mean, dude, we were sat in my kitchen and we were both like, right, we're not going back to uni, but so we need a plan. And we were like, right, if we don't know anyone, we're cooked. Like, we need to start meeting people. And like, we didn't, you know, I didn't make a penny from business for 5 months after we started the podcast. So like the original plan was just like, let's just walk down the path. It's like what you were saying about the car and headlights.
Yeah.
Like, let's just see what's in front of us. Let's see who we meet. Let's see what comes from that. And eventually it kind of came from me writing my newsletter and I started ghostwriting for people. But I also think that is so important. Like we both did a year of planning how to make money online before either of us made a single penny from anything. But I would plan so meticulously. Like I would plan pricing. I would write, you know, we wrote business plans. We wrote everything. And all of it, like not all of it, but a lot of it goes down the window when you actually get in the trenches. Like when you actually start learning, like I was talking to you about this with my skill stack, like you don't know what skills will be on top of your foundational skill until you're in there.
Yeah.
Then you can speak to your clients. You can say, like, you know, what else do you need? And you
100%.
can't have those conversations unless you actually get started and get in the door.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, trying to plan ahead to point C when I just needed to tackle point A.
100%.
And I think that's also another big thing that people will, with setting the goals high. So for example, telling someone to go for 5-10K a month, there's a lot of skills that are needed in that, and people might try and fast track those skills when it's like, right, but in order to do that, you do still need your 1K, but go for 10. You know what I mean? Get your 1K with your skill, stack to 5 with your skill, and then go up the skill stack.
100%, yeah. I mean, there's always going to be a caveat. Like you should have your goals set high, but if you're focusing on problems that you're going to encounter 10K a month, you're focusing on the wrong things. You're at problems of how do I make my first pound, dollar. That's your current problem. So like focus on that before you even move to the next. Like the car and the headlights is such a good analogy, which is like, for people watching, it's like if there's a really windy road, right, and you're driving in the dark and you've got your headlights on, you can see the bend in front of you, right? You can't see the bend 10 bends in front because that's all your lights will shine on. Focus on that before you look at the next bend and the next one and the next one, because if you're worrying about like when people start their businesses, one of the first questions I get a lot of the time is like, what about tax? I'm like, don't fucking worry about tax. Tax is a good problem to have, like in reality, when you're making good money, because it says that your business is doing well.
Yeah.
Focus on that problem when that comes, not now. People are like, oh yeah, but how do I set up efficient for tax? How about you focus on actually developing a skill before that, you know?
Yeah. Like I'm still jobby in tax now, and I'm just like, I don't even want to sort it now. I'm just gonna wait for the letter and then sort it then.
Yeah, 100%. I think. Yeah, it's just people focusing on the wrong things, and then you don't scale as you should because it's almost like a good way to say it is like you're a car, right? And you're like, let's say for example you're going 100 miles per hour, you're going to be in 7th gear, right? There's no point in getting started and going to 7th gear because you're like hoping to get up to 100 miles per hour. Start in gear 1, then gear 2, then gear 3, because you have to go up bit by bit, otherwise the vehicle doesn't get you there. So yeah, don't worry about tax and 10 grand a month problems until you hit 10 grand a month, and they're good problems to encounter because it means stuff's working. When you get an accountant, like, oh god, what do I do when I get an accountant? That's a good thing to have. You get to go accountant shopping because it means you're making money, which is good.
What do you think is kind of like a good framework then for, say, somebody who's just getting into like the business space, for them to like a good framework for goal setting in terms of not being too far ahead and not being too niche down into such tiny things, but how would you kind of go about it in your, let's say, your first 3 months of business? Yeah. How would you kind of go about just framing the way that you set your goals?
Yeah. So this is a good question because I actually have a frame in mind. So I would do it into it's like a goal, how, now framework, right? So you write the big goal, which is like X amount of money, or business is doing what, X amount of clients, whatever it is. That's the goal. The how is the vehicle that's going to get you there. It's like the business model, or I have to sign 2 clients to do this, or I have to do this, or I have to do this amount of outreach, whatever it is. And then you have a now, and that's like, cool, what is the next step in front of your face that you actually have to do to actually start working towards that big goal? And the only thing that should change is the now. The goal and the how should stay exactly the same. Same vehicle, same goal. The now you should constantly update again and again and again, which kind of like, it breaks it down. It's like the there's something called like a 5-minute rule or something, which is like, let's say you have a big goal. What is the next thing you can do in 5 minutes to get towards that? I can outreach to people. Okay, break it down more. 5 minutes. Okay, I can write outreach scripts. Break it down more. I want to find the people I have to reach out to. Identify the market, right? And then you start doing next 5 minutes, next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So goal how now kind of allows you to break it down into like big goal, how I'm going to get there, and the now should keep refreshing. You write the now, you tick it off, you do the next now, and you write the next one, and then you tick it off and you write the next one. And that allows you to constantly go like step by step as per to thinking, right, goal is to make 10K. I've got to sign 4 clients for 2,500 each. How do I do that? Like just break it all the way down to the very, very basics.
Yeah.
Which is then like troubleshooting your business and whatnot.
I remember doing mine in Kenya Airport, and it was
it
was 10K a month by my 21st birthday. It's 6 months ahead.
I've got old draw then.
Yeah. But I also, like, you know, something that I did want to talk about as well. You know, a lot of the teaching that you do is teaching people who are at zero. You know, as you get further along in your entrepreneurial journey, do you find it more difficult to remember what it was like when you were starting? Or do you think because you have so much documentation of it and you're having so many conversations with people that you still do remember the fundamentals? Because like even now, I find the stuff that I found hard when I was getting starting quite simple now.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when people ask me, I have to hold short of being like, just fucking outreach. You know what I mean? Just send a message.
Yeah.
How do you think you've still kind of got that fundamental understanding of what it's like to start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that there's definitely a balance, because part of it is like my problems that I focus on, or try and, you know, overcome on a daily basis are much more high level problems now than the problems people have like starting off. Some of the stuff does kind of piss me off because I've figured it out so many times. It's like people be like, how do you get motivated? And I'm like, what is your other option? Like, don't do the work. Like there's like, that isn't really like, you know, like, how do I get motivated? That shouldn't be something that you're kind of worrying about. It's like, well, okay, cool. What's your other option? Say that I don't be motivated. I don't do the work. Cool. Don't even start this and don't even bother. Right. So those kind of like questions do get on my nerves. Not on my nerves, but it's like, it's quite simple, like the way I see it. And they see it as like, oh, I need to find motivation somewhere. How do I do this? But like the majority of the problems, I feel like I've got quite a good understanding of like going into their frame of mind and understanding how they're seeing it, which I think is quite a good attribute to have as like a coach or like someone that can be able to teach, because you have to really go down to someone's level and view their perspective as per to just kind of seeing it from this bird's eye view. It's like understanding, right, this guy is terrified to post his first video on TikTok. When I'm thinking, just post 100 and then worry about what people think. He's thinking, yeah, but how do I actually speak to a camera? And like understanding that is like it's a really good trait to have, and it's something that I'm getting much better at in terms of like really understanding their perspective, their current problems, their worries, and then how to overcome it. But yeah, it's a mix and match.
Because it's not just that as well. I mean, every single person who you're coaching, you know, you're not teaching a business model. Like you've got people like me who are doing copywriting, and then you've got people in the inner circle who are doing interior design. You know, you have to be creative and be adaptable as a coach to be able to look at what someone else is doing in an industry that you might not have any knowledge about and help them turn it into a business. You know, how do you find that aspect of things when you get someone who has a bit more of a, not an obscure skill, but it's not, you know, copywriting, sales or something like that? What's your first thought when someone says their skill to you and it's a bit out of your field of expertise?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I love it so much. It's called the protege effect, right? Where you basically become so much more advanced and better at what you do by teaching it and having to break it down and explain it. You know, if you've just like, you know, like when I'm, for example, hiring like a closer, someone on my sales team, the first job I would give them is analyze my sales calls, break down my sales calls, tell me what I've done wrong and stuff like that. Because when they have to put themselves in the perspective of like, I'm a teacher now, I'm a coach, I have to break this down, you start to teach yourself things. And I love it when it's someone like has an absolute mental skill that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I have to think, shit, how in the world can this be monetized? I have to go back to my basics of like, okay, cool. Like, let's go back to the very, very basics. We've got to solve a problem. This problem has to be in demand. There has to be a market that suits this problem and stuff like that. I absolutely love it because it's like a new challenge. Like each person I work with is like it's kind of like a project, you know. It's like, right, cool, here's a new business model, here's a new approach. And the more kind of creative and unique they are, they love it. I mean, some people just go with like, yeah, I don't know, I'll do sales. I'll be a remote closer. And I'm like, probably not the best bet, but of course you can like create a roadmap around it. But when someone comes in like the inner circle, like, you know, like an AI skill, and they want to create a chatbot for this like crazy industry.
That's quality. That one is insane.
I'm thinking, can I get shares of this business?
I was going to say, when you're taking on these projects, I'd be like, how much to get you started? You know what I mean, I'll fling you a bit of cash and we'll get some startup.
It's like a Dragon's Den type thing.
100%, 100%. It's like, when the more creative it is, it's like more exciting because it's like, shit, this person has to really like go to market a whole different like approach and that kind of stuff. And it could be something in the future. You know, I need to massively, like kind of Alex Hormozy type thing. I need to massively improve everything and grow more. But like, that's something I'd love to do. Take like small, medium businesses to like reasonably big after I've done it over and over and over again myself, because I can do what I'm doing now, but actually get rewarded in multiple ways for it, which is really exciting. But no, I absolutely love it. It's like,
I was going to ask you, you know, after obviously you've only just got started with the Kaizen and stuff, but I know that you're someone who plans medium to long term. You know, what do you see yourself doing? You know, most people start with like a service-based business. You've checked that box. Most people then go into consulting. You've checked that box. But, you know, what other industries could you see yourself getting into when you're 30s, 40s, 50s? Yeah. Obviously, 40s and 50s are far away. But, you know, I don't think...
I'll be a farmer at 50. No, it's a good question. I mean, most people go into like SaaS, right? It's like, yeah, cool. They do the agency, they do the consulting or the coaching or the education, and then they do software, because that's something that can scale exponentially with, they're not tied to it whatsoever, or they do products and stuff like that. For myself, I'm not 100% sure. I like, my whole mission at the moment is to really kind of change the messages around online business a bit more, like away from that kind of like start this business model that I've given a really fancy name. And I did it before, like I was the culprit of it. I was like, oh, because I started my own business and I was like, I'll teach it, I'll give it a fancy name and people will love it. People get so hooked into that because they can make it sound really nice. Growth operating. Oh my God, what's this called? Like, it's an incredible thing. It's a new market. It like creator economy, blah, blah, blah. Sure. Like, but when you break it down, it's like, it's a skill that you're providing to a person to solve a problem. And I want to really break that down. I know it's a big mission, like to try and like, you know, tackle, because it's you're fighting against like all these like emotions like FOMO and kind of like you know, impulsiveness and stuff like that, and all these like creative names. My mission is to like break down modern online business back from business models, SMMA, Amazon FBA, all this kind of stuff, and to thinking like, cool, if you want to create like a real business that has longevity and you can scale it beyond belief, start with a skill. Because it doesn't mean that you have to then create like a very boring service-based business. You can do it in so many ways. Like the person we're talking about, the AI business, he's turning it into a subscription business. He doesn't have to do anything. It's not attached to him whatsoever. He makes a product once, he sells it to 1,000 people, he's making 100 grand a month. Ridiculous. It doesn't mean you have to start a boring service-based business, but still start with a skill. Because that way you're not a business model, SMMA, that means cool. If you want to do SMMA, marketing, copywriting, sales, project management, people management, 5, 6 other skills that go into that service that typically you would have a whole team behind. When you're going into that completely blind, you're trying to learn a business and develop skills that you don't yet have, which is fine, you can learn them, but you're trying to do it all at once and go to market within the next month, because that's what people do. I started an SMMA and made money in my 3rd month, or like, you know, not even that 3rd week. Doesn't really happen typically. And if the reason it works for 5% of people and fails for 95% of people is because of that exact reason. The 5% of people do kind of have that skill set already. They have a basic understanding. The majority don't, and that's why they kind of fall through the gaps.
I had an interesting conversation with a friend on Saturday night who was like, you know, I've had times when I've thought about getting into the whole online thing, but he was just like, I just don't really believe it. I don't really believe it. And it's like, I feel like it's a bit of a double-sided coin where the people who do believe it can get marketed to, and like with a business model or whatever. Like the people who do believe it, and they're like, yeah, dad, 3 grand, big business model, I want to invest, I want to join. But then there's also the other side of it where it's like, some people think it's too good to be true, so they take it. And then there's some people who think it's too good to be true and they think it can't be done. Like, surely if everyone could just buy a £1,500 trading course and be a millionaire, then everyone would do it. And I think there is with the skill to profit, you can bridge that gap between the people who are like highly optimistic, and it's like, yeah, be optimistic, but actually learn how to do something first. And then there's people who don't believe it, and it's like, well, it's actually you just need to learn how to do something and be able to solve a problem, and you kind of like tone both of them down from their extreme views to make it accessible and lower the barrier to entry.
100%. I think a lot of it is limiting beliefs about what they believe they can do as well. And I get that, like someone selling like a trading program, it's like, here's mechanical trading, you don't have to do a singular thing, you put in money, you get money out the other end. It sounds incredible, right? But like the thing that people have to understand is that the majority of these business models do work 100%, like, because when you go back to basics, again, it's a skill solving a problem with an industry, blah, blah, blah. But they all work with different factors and features. Like, you can start Amazon FBA and it can work, but are you willing to, you know, kind of like have storage and have products and do all this kind of stuff? Do you want to live that life? If not, you go with something else, like maybe like a service-based business that allows you to detach yourself from it. Like, all of these work, they just work in different ways. I think people need to understand that the reason it doesn't work for a lot of people was because they don't have the skills it actually requires to make it work. But yeah, bridging the gap it's important. Like, you should have optimism, you should be a little bit delusional, but you should still be realistic. Because I say that like before about people having to have those kind of like much bigger goals, but when I'm talking to someone brand new who has absolutely no experience, they're like, yeah, I reckon I can make 10K in a few months. I'm like, I love the goal. Don't get me wrong. You have to be realistic with it. Like, you should have something like 10K in 6 months is much more realistic and obtainable, because if you can do 2K in your first month, you're well on the way there. You're rinsing and repeating to get there, which I think is kind of just like an important factor to remember.
How would you say that, say you're like just starting out or whatever, you niche down and actually find like your skill? Because a lot of people, they might have the motivation there, everything locked in, and like, I've got my routine, I know what I want to do, but I just don't know where to start in terms of where is my skill, what is it, what am I doing next?
Yeah, that's a fun game to play. So that's like, that's then looking at like, I mean, there's so many different directions you can take in terms of like, oh, you can look at markets that already exist and try and find problems within that market. You can look at skills that you may have that you don't really know. Maybe you just go with something that you're passionate about, or you're like, copyright sounds really cool, it's selling through text, I could 100% do that. I mean, that's how you did it, right?
I mean, dude, I was just like, when I'm given a bit more time, like I did set a couple of sales calls before I wrote any copy. Yeah. And I was like, fucking hell, you got to think quick here. Like, and that was just not really my thing. And I was like, but if you sit me down with a Google Doc and give me a bit of time, I'm a weapon. Like, I can do some damage. You know what I mean? I'm good like that. And that was more of the, like, for me, it was like sales and copywriting are two things that are, they're good to get into, because they're actually good skills that can be used, not just in like an online business, but, you know, big businesses have copywriters to have TV adverts or whatever. And for me, it was like, right, I feel a bit more comfortable leaning towards this, because when I've got a bit more time and I can think, I'm more effective.
Yeah, and that's just a process of throwing shit at the wall until you see something sticks. Like, that's another part of it. If you don't know what skill to go with, try different ones. Like, give yourself kind of like a limit of like, right, cool, I'm going to try this for a week. I'm going to do loads of research and understand if it's something I actually want to jump into. Because if I say, right, your skill is, I don't know, automation, using all these different softwares and all that kind of stuff to make a business's life more efficient, whatever it is, try it for a week, see if it's actually something you want to do, because you'll realize quite quickly, like, Jesus, I hate this, it's boring, it's mundane, I hate the software, it's confusing. Try something else then. Copywriting allows you to use your creativity and be unique and be different. Maybe that's something more in line with what you as a person. So part of it is like trying until you find something that works. Another part is funny or unfair advantage. Like, a lot of people have one, but they don't realize, where it's like you have a bit of a kind of a knack in something else that allows you to kind of have a like 1 foot up above other people in like an industry. I mean, I don't know how necessarily it would work for copywriting, but it could just be the fact where you used to write loads of blogs when you were younger about stuff that you're interested in.
I used to read loads of tweets.
There you go.
That was it for me.
That could literally be it. And it's like, well, I do actually love, I don't know, I post every day on Twitter, like to myself pretty much. No one follows me, but I just do it. I actually like to write quite a lot. I'm actually going to try that, or just keep trying stuff until it fails. Like, people want the money so quickly that they're unwilling. If I were to say to you, right, if you want to, let's just say, have a business that does 10 grand in 6 months, are you willing for the first 3 months to try 40 skills over and over again, keep trying different ones until you find what works? Most people go, no. Like, they wouldn't want it, right? Because they don't want, or they would probably say yes, but when you actually go and do it, they don't want to do it. That's part of the process. Like, keep trying things until you see what works. And all it takes is one skill. You don't need like 10, you don't need all of them to work. One skill that you're like, this is quite cool, I could probably do this a bit more. Go ahead of it. Like, and it doesn't mean you have to be good. We have a video editor in the inner circle, right? Video editing, like probably one of the most overpopulated skills to exist, because my 15-year-old brother does video editing. This guy makes 10 grand a month doing video editing, because he's like kind of like positioned himself in a different way and whatnot. So any skill works. It's then about like how you actually execute with it, and what market you go into, and how you like present your problem or solution and stuff like that.
When did you have your first like, wow, this might actually be worth it moment in business?
Oh God, what was my first? I tell you, like a big kind of pivot for me, or let's just say I was able to kind of like bird's eye view it a bit more and be like, that's pretty impressive, was when I started my like social media management kind of gig, like, I didn't consider it an agency or anything, but what I did is my sister worked for a restaurant, and the manager, who's a grumpy fucker, he was just like, I need someone to do social media. And Lauren was like, right, Callum posts on TikTok. I didn't have much there, but she was like, yeah, he posts there. So I walked in to them, suit and tie on, laminated piece of paper.
Yes.
I went, I've got 3 packages for you. And like before, I spent all night analyzing their socials, and I was like, and their socials were pants. It was like they would post like stock images of like beer and stuff like that, and it was like they would post like the same thing twice or 3 times a week, so I was easy to analyze and like critique it. And I got my first client off the back of that. I then did the same thing to a like a restaurant type thing that Flo worked for at the time. So these 2, I had kind of my foot in the door, but I had to do the same thing, go and speak to the manager, upsell them on a package and this kind of thing. And then I did it for a few other places, and I went on Upwork and I became like a freelancer, got a crypto gig, which like paid me a lot more money for it. Started doing it for like a fashion brand in Dubai, and another like this like supplement brand. Like it was really like sporadic. But I remember going to my granny's once, and I was talking to my dad, and had like a spreadsheet of like how much money, when payments came in, what date, and like that. I like dragged down on like the money, saw the total at the bottom. It was like $5,000, $5,000 a month. Like this is how much was coming in. And I remember showing him, and it was like, it was just like that's pretty mental. Like at that point, and I was thinking, $5,000 every single month. 2 months later, I lost all of them. Like,
really? How much were you charging them?
Nothing crazy. I mean, because it wasn't really based on how much I wanted to, like this. Again, this goes into the circle. Like I didn't choose my market. My market kind of chose me, because I was like, anyone that will work with me, do it. So the restaurant gigs did like 500 piece, I think 500 each a month. The crypto gig did like 1,700, which was ridiculous.
What were your deliverables for them?
Posting once a day.
Really?
But they have money to throw around. So that's like the idea of like find a market that will pay you a lot of money. The crypto space has stupid money, especially like a good, well-funded startup. Yeah. So I was creating graphics on Canva, posting once a day, every single day. That was literally it. And the funny thing was that the work I was doing, the guy who I was kind of doing it with, like the founder, like kind of like critiqued everything, because he was one of those people where he was like, no one can do anything better than I can do it myself. So everything I did, it was basically like a draft, and I'll send it over to him, he would do it himself and then post it, and I still got paid, which was pretty cool. And then these other places will, again, like they give me a drive full of photos, 10 gigabytes of photos. I organize them, I schedule them, I post them once a day. That was literally it. That was my whole gig.
Sounds like a steady graft.
Honestly, like it was like, cool, I'll just tick it all off in the morning, do it all in the morning, and I don't have to do anything else. So that's when I was in property, like trying to get into property and stuff like that. But yeah, that was my whole gig. And like looking at that amount on Google Sheets, and like, again, dragging over the numbers, it'd be like $5,000 total. Crazy, ridiculous. And I think that may have also included like a sponsorship or 2 that I had with my socials. But again, looking at that and going, this was after college, I didn't have a job, and it was like, actually I was working at Dunelm at the time, but I didn't have anything like going for me. I didn't didn't want to go into career or anything. So looking at that was like, mental. This can actually be something. I got to start systemizing it and stuff like that.
Do you think anything is compared to that feeling of finding the spreadsheet? Like I remember when I got my first retainer client and ended the Google call, it probably hadn't even loaded it. I ran downstairs. I was like to my mum, I was like, I got my first client. I was so happy. I was like running.
I remember FaceTime. I
was like running around the kitchen table, belled my brother. It's like the best feeling ever. I don't think anything will ever compare to that. I don't know if you feel like that as well.
100%. I think my big one was like, I mean, even getting the first client, but like surpassing that kind of 10K per month mark was ridiculous. But being able to look at Stripe, clicking monthly, looking at it, and it's like, Jesus Christ. Like, but also there's that aspect of like fear, because it's like now I am making £10,000 a month, but I could quite easily lose £10,000 a month, which then kind of like encounters a whole new row of problems of like, shit, I'm making this, but now this is the new standard. It's the new normal. If you start dropping income, although it's still way above like other people's income, you're bricking it. You're like, oh my God, stuff's going wrong. And it's like, you know, even when I was kind of like at my peak months doing SMIP, and I started kind of like trickling it all down because it wasn't really what I was focusing on, income was dropping because I wasn't coaching, I wasn't pushing anything like that. And everything is like, although again, it's a lot more money than other people are making, I'm thinking, oh my God, what is happening? Which is just like, you know, for every high, there's a new kind of like fear and low and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that was a big pivotal moment for me.
I mean, for me, it's now like I've had a busy couple of weeks, like getting all this work in. And now it's like, right, if you want this every month, you have to do this every month. And it's like, obviously I will find a way to start outsourcing and whatever, but I know what you mean. Now it's like, right, if I do less next month, it's going to feel like a loss, even though it's still great. And it's literally what I would have given anything for a year ago. That is now like the new high.
How would you say you kind of keep your emotions in check then when it comes to things like that? Say, I don't know, you've had your first amazing month or whatever. Your next month, you might have taken a few hours, you might have dropped a little bit. What would it be that kind of like keeps you going and keeps your emotions on point rather than being like, oh God?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For me, it's a bit weird because I love the story. I want to be able to tell a story in like years' time where I go like, oh, down, up, down, up, down, but land on and up. That's like, I can't wait to be able to do that. I don't think there's any good story of like a little bit of like, and stuff went wrong, but then it went right again and stuff like that. And also like a good kind of method that I use is just like zooming out on the kind of like proverbial graph. Like, cool. Maybe, for example, I hit 10 grand and I dropped to 7 or 6 because stuff went wrong. I lost a client. I zoom out the graph. I went from 0 to 10 grand like in a month. That is still ridiculous. So I think it's just that kind of idea, and also not putting as much pressure on yourself. I think that, especially with social media and stuff like that, and I probably don't contribute to it very, very well, where it's like people just, that's people's norms now. People expect that. And if they don't get that, it's like, oh, I'm not doing well enough, or this kind of stuff. But it's like, zoom out from where you were to where you are now, because in on it, the graph looks like that, right? Every single day, stuff's going right, stuff's going wrong. But when you zoom out a year, 6 months, whatever it is, as long as it's doing that over like a period of time, you're on the right path. And I think that's just important to know, that you shouldn't be kind of craving it instantly. That's what like delayed gratification is for.
Yeah, 100%.
You want to make it that you can deserve it. I think that's quite important, as per to on a whim, on an absolute fluke, because that's the worst thing, because you will lose it.
Yeah.
So when you kind of like, you've put in the graft and you've got a result and you deserve it, that's a far better feeling than anything else. I think.
I feel like having that first initial big loss as well, you'll learn a lot from it.
100%.
Like I know I experienced that a couple of months ago when, with what I'm doing, I signed my first person on, doing all right, and then I had a pretty big problem which ended up causing me to lose them. And although at this time I was like, oh my God, I've just put in all this effort and I've been doing all this, and then I've lost my first client, it taught me everything. Like now I know whatever going into it again, what to do, how to do this, how to systemize everything. And even though it was such a ropey first few weeks and it ended up being a bit of a shit show, I've learned a lot from it.
100%. Yeah, it's always that. It's just a perspective of how you look at it. Like, do you look at it as like, cool, this has taught me something new, or do you look at it as like, I'm failing, everything around me is crumbling? Those like the two like completely different perspectives, and it will dictate where you go. Like if you do take it as a perspective of, I've lost a client, but hey, I know that I can actually just do that again now, and I can rinse and repeat, and I can do this differently and this differently, and I can scale. Or you take it as like, I knew it wouldn't work, mic down, it's over. You know, that because that is how some people do it. It's like, well, happy days, like I had it for a little bit and I don't. Those two different ways of thinking about it will completely determine where you go in life. I think.
You know, it's you've had great success, and you know it's very easy for us to all sit here and talk about like the good stuff, but do you kind of have anything? I know that you love work and I know that you love what you do, but do you have anything like, not day to day, but like problems that come up where like you might think, not necessarily like it's not what's going to happen in the future, like future problems or worries or anything like that?
What, in business?
In anything.
I don't know. I mean, I'm quite an optimistic person at heart, I think. I think that, I know that doesn't help people watching. They kind of want to see like the raw side of it, but everything I do see from a very optimistic standpoint. Like a lot of it is like, if this is in my control truly, and I'm the person that dictates what happens with it, I know it's going to work out in the end. So I think a lot of it is that. And I don't know, like I'm not spiritual or anything. I don't believe in like the energy of the universe, but I do believe in like, what happens will happen. Like whether I try my hardest to not make it happen, if it is bound to happen, it will happen. And that's the kind of idea, like, you know, control what you can control, and anything you can't control is wasted energy completely. Like there's a good, who is it? I can't remember his name. Poirier, the UFC fighter.
Oh yeah.
He used this analogy of like when he's going into like a big fight, he'll draw a big circle, right? Or draw just a big circle. He'll write everything in the circle that he's in control of: his diet, his routine, his exercise, the people he's around, stuff like that. And he writes everything outside the circle that he's not in control of: the press, what other people say, other people's thoughts, opinions, stuff that goes wrong. And when he's like locked into his fight, he only focuses on stuff inside the circle, and he's like, anything outside, not my problem. I think he did this after his first big loss with Conor McGregor. I don't know how like UFC heavy you are, but like he lost because Conor got in his head massively. And he's like
he comes flying out and Conor just clips him.
The press got him, Conor got him everything, and now he does that exercise where he draws a circle. He doesn't fight anymore, but draws a circle. Everything on the outside not in control of, everything on the inside he is in control of. And I think that's a good way to look at life, because it's like it allows you to actually look at it from a perspective of, I'm not going to stress about this stuff because it isn't going to impact me. Whether I stress or don't stress doesn't make a difference with the outcome. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do have things that go wrong and troubles and stuff like that. I think that's normal, but I think it's all about how you kind of like, how you go on forward from it, and how you look at it, like, you know, or how you deal with it, really. That's literally the biggest part of it, because, again, I've had troubles, but it's, do you kind of bounce back, or do you quite literally let it, like, sit on top of you and weigh you down?
Well, dude, it has been an absolute pleasure to sit down and speak to you. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you?
People can find me. Actually, I got my username back recently. So it's Callum Carver on Instagram, Callum Carver on TikTok. I don't really use TikTok too much. And then growing on YouTube as well, which is Callum Carver.
And if people want to learn from you,
where should they go? It's the Kaizen, thekaizen.co, and you'll find all the links there.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on and the help that you've given me over the past few months as well. I'm sure we'll run it back in a few years or something.
100%.
Something like that. You're down in Bath. You're ages away.
Oh, mate, my lease ends November and I have no idea where I'll be. Maybe I'll be in Manchester again.
Cool. Right. Nice one, dude. We appreciate it.